I discovered the truth by accident. It wasn't hidden, not really. The signs were everywhere if I'd been brave enough to see them. The eye rolls when I mentioned dinner, the distant replies, the second phone she never explained. But the document on her laptop made it undeniable. I was helping her look for a warranty when I stumbled across it. Sitting there in plain sight, between travel plans and diet schedules, labeled in all caps, Harvey, too safe, find better. It wasn't dramatic, it was clinical, a bullet point among other mundane items like furniture upgrades or therapy sessions. Me, reduced to something so impersonal, so calculated. I didn't close the file. Instead, I read every line, each one carving deeper into my sense of self-worth. And yet, strangely, I wasn't angry. I felt humiliated, not because of what she had done, but because I'd known something was wrong all along. Still, I stayed silent, hoping love meant enduring anything. That night at dinner, she chatted casually about curtains and oat milk as though nothing hung between us. I nodded along, pretending ignorance, while imagining how empty our home would feel once I left. But instead of leaving immediately, I decided to leave her with something else, a note. Just 3 words, "Be careful wishing." She found it the next morning after discovering half the bedroom cleared out, my keys abandoned on the counter. For once, she was speechless. What followed was a quiet war waged under the same roof. While she flirted with her gym crush over texts, I scouted furnished apartments online. As she binge-watched mindless TV shows, I quietly transferred our joint savings into a private account, disguising it as an investment experiment she wouldn't question anyway. Every sigh she gave at my presence fueled my resolve. My exit strategy became a mirror image of her casual dismissal. Efficient, emotionless, precise. Then things took an unexpected turn. That week she changed. Not affectionately, but politely, almost cautiously. Was it guilt? Instinct? Whatever it was, she suddenly cared about including me again. Invited me to drinks with her friends, the very ones who once joked that I had Mall Walker energy. I agreed, not out of forgiveness, but curiosity. Watching her squirm seemed fitting retribution. At the bar, she introduced me with rehearsed enthusiasm, like I was some novelty item. Her coworker laughed too loudly beside her, his hand brushing her arm repeatedly. She didn't flinch away. Meanwhile, I sipped ginger ale, smiling through gritted teeth as her attention drifted more to her phone than to anyone around her. When I excused myself to the restroom, I caught the scene from afar, the forced smiles, the subtle gestures, and realized this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about reclaiming power, dignity, and the parts of myself she thought she could erase without consequence. In the hallway, I tapped send on a scheduled email from my phone, not to her, but to someone else. By the time I returned, she was mid-conversation, smiling as if nothing had changed. But when she saw me, her smile faltered slightly. I wasn't angry or sulking. I was calm because the next piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, and she had no idea what was coming. The email was brief. Just 3 sentences sent to the leasing agent Callan had casually contacted weeks ago about moving into a new apartment. I attached her original inquiry and added, "She's free to tour any time now. I won't be needing the place." It wasn't revenge. It was confirmation. Confirmation that I knew everything, that I'd already begun the exit she had carefully planned but hoped to avoid blame for. I gave her exactly what she wanted, just not how she expected. The next morning I woke up early as usual, but this time I didn't make coffee, cook eggs, or feed the cat. I simply sat on the edge of the bed, watching her sleep, wondering how long she'd been emotionally absent. Months? A year? Her hand twitched toward my side of the bed out of habit, but when it found only empty space, she didn't open her eyes. She just pulled the blanket tighter around herself. I took a deep breath, grabbed my go-bag from the closet, already packed, already paid for, and slipped one last item inside, the original wedding photo she loved but never framed, the one she said made her look too in love. I tucked it into the front pocket of my duffel, not because I missed her, but because it served as proof that at some point our life together had been real, even if only for me. By noon, I was gone. She didn't text or call. Either she hadn't noticed yet, or worse, she had and didn't care. But that night, things shifted. At 9:47 p.m., a single text came through. "Where are you?" No emojis, no punctuation, just those 3 words. I didn't respond. Instead, I uploaded a single photo to our shared Google album, something we hadn't touched since our honeymoon. It was a picture of the empty key hook by the door, her faint reflection visible in the background. The caption read, "Be careful what you wish for." Minutes later, 3 dots appeared on my screen, hesitated, then disappeared. Nothing followed. No message ever came through. And I knew she was standing there, phone in hand, staring at that empty wall, frozen. Finally realizing that she hadn't merely pushed me away, she'd replaced me before I even left. The next morning, I braced myself for more messages, maybe a call, or even a voicemail where she'd pretend confusion or play the victim. But instead, silence. Total radio blackout. I stared at my phone longer than I should have, waiting for the screen to light up. I don't know why. Maybe I was testing her. Maybe I wanted to believe that a small part of her still cared enough to fight for what we once had, even though it was far too late. But nothing came, just the bland hum of the motel air conditioning and the soft click of the ice machine outside my room. By mid-afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I accessed our shared email account, something I'd never done before. Her password hadn't changed in years because she never expected me to leave. What I found made my blood run cold. The trash folder was filled with deleted emails, flirty exchanges between her and someone named Ty, whose signature identified him as Tyson McRae, a personal trainer certified by NASM. Some messages were brief, "Fun last night." Others were far more explicit. But the one that hit hardest was titled "Moving Timeline." It detailed her plan to phase me out of her life slowly, carefully avoiding any drama. She wrote, "He's too passive to do anything drastic. I just need to keep him comfortable until I can fully move on. Comfortable like an old mattress, like a placeholder." I sat back, my heart pounding, not from anger, but from shame. She had studied me like a puzzle, analyzed my every move, and decided I was too dull to notice I was being dismantled piece by piece. But she underestimated one thing about me. I don't explode. I evaporate. I cleared my browser history, logged out, and dropped the burner phone I'd used to book the motel into the nearest dumpster. Then I checked into a small studio apartment 2 cities away, using my middle name. No forwarding address, no trace, just gone. That night, I saw it on her Instagram story. An old photo of us laughing in the rain, captioned, "Some people throw everything away before asking why it was broken." She was already spinning the narrative, painting herself as the victim. But here's the thing, I wasn't broken. I was free. You'd think after everything I'd uncovered, I'd have the self-respect to stay away from her social media. But curiosity is insidious. It doesn't destroy you all at once. It gnaws at you bit by bit. By the time I opened the app again, her story had disappeared. Still, the damage was done. She wasn't mourning me. She was crafting an image of herself as the heartbroken wife abandoned without warning by her boring, unremarkable husband. To the outside world, that's exactly who I appeared to be. The man who gave up, the coward who walked away without a fight. But I wasn't trying to clear my name anymore. Instead, I wanted to understand who this person was that I'd spent years living with. As it turned out, Tyson wasn't some fleeting summer fling. He'd been her emotional anchor for over 9 months. They had routines, inside jokes, pet names. While I worked overtime to afford the kitchen tiles she insisted on, they went on weekend getaways together. She called him T. In one message, she joked that she'd upgrade to version 2.0 once the warranty on Ernie expired. That line cut deeper than anything she'd ever said to my face. Who could say such a thing about someone they once promised forever to? I kept reading, even though I knew I shouldn't. She told him I was too gentle, that I never pushed back, that I was safe but forgettable. I laughed bitterly, because, in a twisted way, she wasn't wrong. Safe and forgettable. Those words echoed in my mind long after I closed the laptop. For years, I thought I was building a life together. Now I realized I'd simply been playing a role, a placeholder in her story while she planned her escape. The betrayal stung. But what hurt most was how easily I fit into that box she created for me. I wasn't angry at her for leaving. I was angry at myself for letting her reduce me to something so small. In the days that followed, I began unpacking not just my suitcase, but also the pieces of myself I'd neglected. I started journaling, pouring my thoughts onto paper in an attempt to make sense of it all. Writing became my therapy, a way to process the emotions I couldn't voice aloud. Slowly, I began to see a pattern in my own behavior, a tendency to suppress my needs, to prioritize comfort over authenticity. I realized I had allowed myself to become passive, to fade into the background rather than demand attention or respect. The experience forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about myself. Yes, I'd been betrayed, manipulated, and ultimately discarded. But I'd also let it happen. I'd chosen silence over confrontation, invisibility over presence. And now, miles away from the life I once knew, I resolved to change that. I joined a local book club, not because I needed distraction, but because I craved connection. For the first time in years, I found myself sharing parts of my story with others, carefully, cautiously, but honestly. Their responses surprised me. They didn't pity me. Instead, they encouraged me to keep moving forward, to focus on growth rather than regret. Through these new relationships, I discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed. Months passed, and the sharp edges of pain began to dull. I still thought about her sometimes, about the life we almost had. But those thoughts no longer consumed me. Instead, they served as reminders of how far I'd come. I learned to trust my instincts again, to value myself enough to set boundaries. Most importantly, I stopped seeing myself through her eyes. Freedom isn't the absence of pain. It's the ability to rebuild despite it. And rebuild I did. One day at a time, one decision at a time, I became someone new, someone stronger, someone who refused to settle for less than he deserved. For years, I lived cautiously, prioritizing harmony over honesty, silence over confrontation. I convinced myself that love equated to unwavering loyalty, even when it left me feeling uneasy and unfulfilled. But one night, in the dim light of that modest studio apartment, clarity struck me like a thunderbolt. She hadn't fallen out of love with me. She had fallen out of love with the version of me that gave her stability. Once secure, she craved chaos, passion, unpredictability. To her, my steadiness felt stagnant, suffocating. I offered calm, and she resented me for it. Now she had her excitement, the trainer, the attention, the thrill. As for me, I was left holding the matchbook. Weeks slipped by without a word from her. No calls, no messages. It was as though she erased me from existence, scrubbing my name clean from her life's blueprint. Surprisingly, the pain wasn't as sharp as I expected. Instead, what emerged was an odd, bitter sense of liberation. I no longer woke up dreading her emotional distance or rehearsing conversations she'd never care to have. For the first time in years, my silence wasn't ignored. It belonged to me. Mine to shape, mine to fill with anything but her memory. I started fresh. A new phone number, a new bank account, a new address, all tied to a different identity. I didn't need to disappear entirely. I just needed to step out of her narrative. The man she discarded, the stable, uninspiring, forgettable partner, ceased to exist the moment I uncovered her truth. That man was gone, replaced by someone who refused to be diminished any longer. But life has a way of twisting stories we think we've closed. Her unraveling began sooner than I anticipated. One evening, an email landed in my inbox from an unfamiliar sender. The subject line read, "I didn't mean all of it." It was her, of course, Kaylin. Her message was messy, contradictory, frantic. There was no apology, only desperation. She wrote about how her new flame lacked depth, how he dismissed her dreams and mocked her vulnerabilities. "He makes me feel exciting," she admitted, "but not seen." I paused, letting her words settle. I had seen her fully, not just the polished surface, but every raw, imperfect layer beneath. And now she was learning the hard truth. Being admired for your facade isn't the same as being loved for your essence. Still, I kept reading. Toward the end, she confessed, "You weren't perfect, but you were real. I never thought you'd actually leave." There it was, the admission buried within the betrayal. She assumed I'd stay, no matter how much she chipped away at me. She treated me like furniture, something immovable and reliable. But I was firewood waiting to ignite. And now she was feeling the chill of her own choices. Her second email arrived soon after, then a third. "Please, just tell me where you are," she pleaded. But I didn't reply. What could I say? That I was healing? That her remorse came too late? Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt, no matter how desperately someone wants to cross them again. This chapter of my life was closed, for good. For years, I found myself excusing the way she treated me, as if I were invisible, a mere fixture in her life, rather than a person with dreams, fears, and a heart that she had once vowed to cherish. Betrayal doesn't offer a neat conclusion or a comforting phrase to erase the pain of being replaced. But what followed was even more devastating, for her, not for me. A coworker of hers reached out to me one day. We weren't close, but we'd exchanged holiday greetings once. He messaged me on LinkedIn saying, "I don't want to meddle, but Callan hasn't been herself lately." He mentioned, "You left abruptly, so I thought I'd check in. She seems lost." That word hit me hard, because when she had me, she wasn't lost, just discontented, as though stability suffocated her. And now, it seemed, Tyson wasn't living up to her expectations. Her social media no longer featured him. No vacations, no gym selfies, just cryptic posts about personal growth and confronting difficult truths. Regret masked as self-improvement. One evening, my phone lit up with her name. Not Kaylin anymore, but Do Not Answer, which is what I'd renamed her contact after leaving. She called once, then again. I let it ring until it stopped. When she called a third time, I powered off my phone entirely and sat in silence. It wasn't anger that kept me still, it was the absence of it. That realization stunned me most. I wasn't pacing, yelling, or falling apart. I felt calm because I finally understood. She saw me as temporary, a placeholder while she explored other options. But I wasn't the one who was lost. I was simply the one who stopped waiting. Healing doesn't arrive with fanfare or dramatic moments set to soaring music. It creeps in quietly during an ordinary morning you don't dread, in a reflection you can face without flinching, in a cup of coffee savored for its simplicity. That's how I knew I was healing, not because she apologized or reached out again. She did, twice, leaving tearful voicemails filled with fragmented regrets, but because I no longer needed anything from her. Not closure, acknowledgement, or vindication. I began piecing my life back together. I picked up my guitar, neglected during years of dinner schedules and arguments over trivial things like light fixtures. I joined a local group that gathered on weekends to swap old vinyl records. There, I formed genuine friendships with people who accepted me as I was, without demanding I be someone shinier, louder, or cooler. In their company, where I didn't have to prove my worth, I discovered peace. Months later, I ran into Callan by chance at the grocery store, standing in the cereal aisle. She appeared smaller somehow, not physically, but emotionally diminished. She smiled faintly, as though trying to recall who we used to be. I gave a brief nod, muttered a polite, "Hey," and continued on my way. I could feel her gaze following me as I made my exit, but I didn't look back, not even once. The person she thought she could replace no longer existed. I had evolved into someone stronger, someone who left with purpose and conviction. As I stepped out of that store, a smile spread across my face. Not because I felt victorious, but because I no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. What I had was enough. My peace, my passion, and most importantly, myself. She may have created a list where I was marked as expendable, the first to be crossed off. But I wrote my own story, one where she no longer held a place. There's something powerful about reaching a point in life where you realize your worth isn't tied to someone else's perception of you. It's not just about walking away from toxicity. It's about knowing deep down that you deserve better than being treated like an afterthought. Whether it's the act of leaving without looking back, reclaiming your sense of self-worth, or simply finding strength in solitude, these moments resonate differently for everyone. Which part of this story struck a chord with you? Was it the quiet dignity of the exit? Or perhaps the realization that they were left behind on a metaphorical list that no longer mattered? If you've ever been in a situation where you felt discarded or replaced, only to rise above it and find peace within yourself, consider this your reminder that moving forward is always worth it. Your journey matters, and so does the way you choose to rewrite your ending.